wave to the way, my fellow friends. Welcome to the rebel-loving Scum, where lovers of Star Wars can geek and be merry. Well, for the most part. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is James Jackson. I am a filmmaker and a content creator. I have another channel called James Jackson Films, which focuses more on camera gear, filmmaking tips, and really delving into the world of the film and video making industry. So, if you come across this channel and maybe you're interested in that, you can head over there and check that out. But this channel is all about Star Wars, which is my favorite IP of all time. I have been wanting to make a Star Wars dedicated channel for quite some time, but I'm always was a bit hesitant about, my place amongst the great many channels on this platform. Nevertheless, at one point I was basically just saying, you know what, yeah, just screw it, and let's just do it. So that's how we came here. I love this universe. I have basically watched all the movies, played most of the games, and read most of the comics and books, mainly in the Old Republic era. The Old Republic era is by far my favorite era of Star Wars in both canon and Legends. So that's a little bit of an introduction to me. Also, let me just say, I also have an active subscription to the Star Wars Old Republic MMO game, and I still play from time to time. So if I will probably put on some SWTOR content here to this channel as well. That is, if this is something that you guys are interested in seeing. But that's a little summarization of me. Let's get into what you guys are really here for. And that is my review of Season 1 of The Mandalorian. Now, The Mandalorian, as of right now, is my favorite show from last year. And we'll get into why in this series of videos that I'm basically putting out to this channel. I'm going to be releasing 3 videos overseeing Season 1 of The Mandalorian, as I think most of y'all will agree that the season was broken into 3 acts. Chapter 1, 2, and 3 are essentially Act 1. Chapters 4, 5, and 6 are Act 2. And then 7 and 8 are part of the climactic Act 3. And I first have to say that I do love the 3-act structure of this season. The first act basically sets up the universe, as well as allowing you to get to know the main characters of this show. Act 2 is like the adventure of the day episodes, and while I know those who've seen this series probably thought this was the weakest point of the show by many people, I, however, found these episodes to be a lot of fun, and I honestly loved them, and I will get into why when we get into Act 2. And then, of course, there's Act 3 that leads to the climax of the season. So let's dive right into Act 1, and we will begin with the universe setup. Now, Star Wars has been in our lives for literally generations. I mean, we're talking about over 40 years of Star Wars content. So within that time period, there have been many stories told. But of course, most people mainly know Star Wars through the episodic saga movies, which leads to many openings for vast stories to tell in the galaxy-sized universe that we have here. So Act 1 of The Mandalorian has quite a load to carry on its shoulders. It has to introduce us to our main character, The Mandalorian, a person who we have no history, no backstory in any part of the Star Wars universe, and has to make us care for him. It has to set the stage of where we are in the Star Wars universe. In this case, it's 6 years after the Battle of Endor and the fall of the Empire. And finally, it has to do all of this in a way that appeals to several generations of fans of an IP whose lore literally spans millennia. Showrunner and producers Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have a lot on their plate, especially Dave Filoni, who helms the very first episode, which I might add is Dave's live-action directorial debut. He was known for his stuff with the Clone Wars, but this is his first live-action scene he's directed. However, I do think the team, for the most part, nailed the task at hand. Of course, we have to start our character dive with our main character of the show, The Mandalorian. In the very opening scene, we see just how much of a badass he is as he makes his way into an isolated bar to capture his bounty and kicks the ass of a couple people in the process. And in the first line ever spoken by our masked protagonist,
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
we get to the first layer of understanding that this character is the traditional lone wolf cowboy. He's neither normally good or evil. He's just someone who's about getting the job done one way or the other. And if you happen to get in his way, well, let's just say it typically doesn't end well for you. The bounty tries to make small talks with Mando, obviously to find ways to weasel his way out of his situation, but I also believe he is trying to see what weaknesses he can exploit. And Mando is not having it. When Mando turns in his bounty to the guild leader, Greef Karga, played by Carl Weathers, he's again not interested in small chat. Throughout this season, you see he's never interacts with any of the other members of the bounty guild. Well, except for this guy. Yeah, we're going to get to him later on. So, throughout the first half of Chapter 1, we see a no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point, badass character. Then right when the second half of Chapter 1 kicks in, the hardened outer shell is figuratively and partially literally taken off. Mando goes into a secret entrance where we see a whole enclave of Mandalorians, from kids with helmets running around to full-blown jetpack Mandos. And it is here in his conversations with a female blacksmith that we get to see who Mando truly is. A foundling. Someone who has not been born of the Mandalorian culture, but who was founded and raised into the Brotherhood. One of the things I love about this show is throughout most of it, we are shown, not told. We were never told in that first act exactly how Mando became a foundling, but we get hints of it through flashbacks from his past. And it's from here, as well as throughout the first act, that we see that our badass protagonist is a flawed character. He has a lot of growing pains. I mean, he's a Mandalorian for sure, but we see time and time again, whether if it's the Blurgs in Chapter 1, the Mudhorn in Chapter 2, or even the final shootout with the Guild in Chapter 3, that he's not some unstoppable force, no, and not even a full Mandalorian. He's kind of like a Mandalorian in training. He has the fundamentals down, but he still can't take on the biggest threat single-handedly. This gives us, the viewers, a sense of relatability with our main character. He still has growing pains, which means we get to grow with him. And of course, who else can help Mando grow as a character other than a being that can get a divisive or even
hive of scum and villainy
that the internet is, to agree that this character must be protected at all costs. Of course, we're talking about Baby Yoda, a small child that has been targeted by the remnants of the Empire and has a large bounty put on him. And we will get to him in a moment. I just want to wrap up with Mando just for a second. Pedro Pascal delivers a stellar performance for a character who says very few words and even fewer facial expressions. Almost throughout all of the entire season, the man is playing a character whom we never get to see his face. Nevertheless, we know exactly what he is thinking and what he is saying. I absolutely love Episode 3 and 7's director, Deborah Chow, and her comments on how she had Pedro not move a lot in her episodes to extrapolate the emotions of the moment for when he actually moves, like when he picks up the ball Baby Yoda dropped and put it back on the stick. We know there's meaning behind the item, and it's ultimately what makes his decision to go back and get Baby Yoda even more profound. And since we're on the subject of Baby Yoda, let's go into the heart of the season as well as the series, and that is the relationship between Mando and Baby Yoda. Now, many people make comparisons of the show to Lone Wolf and Cub, and rightfully so. A Stone Cold Warrior has his heart warmed by a small child he feels obligated to protect. But The Mandalorian brings in a different tie-in, and that is something that is directly to Star Wars lore. And that is the importance of the three valuable things that makes a Mandalorian: honor, combat, and family. Now, most people are aware of the importance of combat and honor in Mandalorian cultures if they were familiar with the Clone Wars series. But family is also something that the Mandalorians value, even higher than combat. It's one of the reasons why Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones requested that the Kamino people make an unaltered clone for him to raise as his own son, which of course we now know as Boba Fett. And while there's debate on whether Jango and Boba are really seen as true Mandalorians, it's still clear that Jango at least held to the core values that make a Mandalorian. The Mandalorian culture can be best summarized in a short story that BioWare Austin made for their MMO, The Old Republic, long before when they were getting ready to launch their expansion, Shadow of Revan. And it's a short story called Bedtime on Corcata. The story is of a Mandalorian man who takes his young daughters to a dangerous planet for training and tells them the story of a Mandalorian female named Shae Vizsla. And I believe from that story, this paragraph best summarizes it. Galron watches his twin daughters over the flames. Tyne and Mary had done well in the day's hunt, handled their weapons and gear properly, and shown great patience. He would tell their mother that they were growing into proper warriors, just like her. It's a good short read and I highly recommend it. I'll leave a link to the story in the description below. Family is a core part of the Mandalorians because they can have the best combat with honor, but it's all irrelevant if they don't have something of their clan to pass on to the next generation. Mando had honor and skills in combat, at least an understanding of it, but the thing that he lacked was a family. That is until Baby Yoda came into the picture. One of my favorite moments in Season 1 is the first third of Chapter 2, The Child. Rick Famuyiwa, the director of Chapter 2, pulled off a task that most directors would probably fail miserably at, which is to have the first 12 minutes of the episode where there's zero dialogue between our two characters. There's not a single word uttered until Mando actually reunites with Quill to ask for assistance with some Jawas. Nevertheless, in that 12 minutes, we saw the beginning of a bond between Baby Yoda and Mando. Baby Yoda constantly trying to help Mando fix his wounds, and Mando being slightly annoyed by Baby Yoda refusing to stay in his crib. And it's here we, as the audience, grow to love the bond these two are forming. It's this moment that sets up the realization in Mando that this bounty is not just another bounty. We see him try to make it seem like it's another job. Once the Empire acquires Baby Yoda and rewards Mando for his delivery, he even asks Greef to give him a new assignment, just like before. But the turn has already begun. This was not just another bounty collection. No matter how hard he tried to make it seem that way, deep down he found something that he still didn't have: family. If you rewatch the scenes of Mando in the covert, he does not interact or engage with any of the other Mandalorians outside of the blacksmith. This gives us an insight that he still feels like an outsider, a loner amongst his own clan that sees each other as family. Hell, we even see one of the other Mandalorians call Mando a coward and try to remove his helmet, something that is basically a taboo in their clan. Baby Yoda was the first real family member he's had in a long while, and family never gets left behind. We see this masterfully played out in Chow's Chapter 3 episode twice. The first is when Mando makes the decision to go back and get Baby Yoda, and the second with the Mandalorian clan coming back to save Mando in the big shootout at the end of the episode. They knew exposing themselves meant they would have to relocate, as Mando himself points out to the fellow Mandalorian, which he was just in a fight with earlier in the episode. And the Mandalorian simply replied with the series line that we've now known as, "This is the way." It didn't matter if they just were about damn near fought and willing to draw daggers at each other. It didn't matter that the Imperial remnants and the Bounty Guild knew where they now were aware of their existence. They look after each other because family sticks together through thick and thin. Act 1 was one of the best depictions of the Mandalorian culture I've ever seen in any medium. It showed that yes, while honor and improving one's combat technique were critical of being a Mandalorian, you still were not a complete Mandalorian without family. And with his new family member, Mando now sets off on adventures with Baby Yoda. Now, before I go, I want to quickly talk about some excellent developments on some side characters that we had in this first act, with even the very little time we have. Let's talk about IG-11, a charismatic, badass hunter droid that makes you question why more of these units were not produced. Quill is a character you sympathize with, as he was someone who spent a lifetime in servitude and was finally rewarded his freedom and simply just wanted peace. But honestly, Grief Karga is probably the one side character I felt the most, especially in Chapter 3. When Mando turned on the bounty, this man who clearly had to fight up the ladder to become the leader of the Bounty Guild, members of his guild won't even cross him when he pushes back on them. So I totally felt for him when Mando, his best bounty hunter, not only betrays a client and takes a contract's assets back after turning it in, but he also takes the reward as well. Karga's reputation is everything, and doing what Mando did in the bounty hunting world was akin to a cardinal sin and could cause irreparable damage to the image of the guild. So to me, in Chapter 3, Grief Karga's actions were totally understandable. But honestly, these are just my thoughts, and this has been my review of Act 1 of Season 1 of The Mandalorian. I would love for you guys to give me your thoughts and comments on my review and your thoughts on the first act. Definitely leave your comments down below. I want to hear you guys. If you enjoyed the content of this video, please make sure to leave a like. The likes definitely help out and help my channel grow. And also make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can see future Star Wars and Mandalorian content. And until next time, may the Force be with you.